welcome to another Leeds Guitar Studio video blog. This time I'm going to answer a few questions that somebody asked me on Facebook after they'd seen a couple of the videos that I've got already on YouTube, and specifically addressing or asking about fourth tuning. So here's the first one. I've got a list. Yeah, sweep patterns. They're asking about sweep patterns. How do they end up? Well, largely, of course, everything's simplified. I mean, the main thing is that you don't have sort of the kink in the tuning. So, for instance, if I'm doing like an A minor pattern, one that everybody tends to play is this. Now, in standard tuning, that would be, or worse still, if you've got to do a major, so you get, which is hardly ideal. So, over a 7-string guitar in fourth tuning, you'll get 3 octaves using a single pattern, or either a single shape that's repeated 3 times, much in the manner you might do on a piano. Other things, yeah, the main thing is the major and minor. This doesn't become a problem across the top 3 strings, so you're not trying to do. So major is just, minor is just. I mean, it's just a technique, really. I mean, when you ask about sweep patterns, what sweep patterns, so it could be anything from kind of altered dominant type things, or I mean, moreover, like one of the things I've been doing lately is doing diminished, but switching around to the 6th rather than the 3rd. Again, it's all symmetrical. So it's all a lot easier. And one of the other questions was rolling with the first, with the fourth tuning. Well, you tend to do less of it. I think it's probably the short answer of it. Again, it just depends on what sort of pattern you're doing. So you might do like a sussy type. But it's always worth practicing this sort of thing. Or is not over the octave. So, it swings and roundabouts with anything. It generally simplifies things, and you won't be having to do a different shape for different things. But sweep patterns, well, what's the sweep? It's just whatever you're playing, isn't it? It's good, major, minor, altered, diminished, augmented. It just means that it's consistent throughout the neck. And as a result, you probably will end up with this finger rolling, generally speaking, to try and make those major thirds and those other intervals that get skewed up by the tuning break. Okay, so the other thing was pros and cons of fourth tuning. Well, it's pretty straightforward, really. If you're doing an A-B against fourth tuning and standard tuning, fourth tuning will always win out whenever you try to improvise and play something that is not necessarily triadic in nature. So if you're doing jazz fusion, it's a clear winner because you're not needing to do big bar chords and all that sort of stuff. It's pointless. And to be honest, with most styles of music, you don't really need big bar chords, especially on electric. And that's conversely where standard tuning wins out, if you like. In that in standard tuning, because you've got the kink there, you end up with those 3 strings forming a major triad by bar. And then the next 3 up, as it were, the top 3, give you the relative minor to that triad. So that does enable a sort of classic rhythm guitar stylings, shall we say, that you find in Hendrix and all the rest of it. Hendrix was a master of utilising those different shapes. So you end up with, rather than like, if in perfect tuning you've got triad shapes essentially, and everything else is variations on that. But of course, in standard tuning, you've got that shape, that set, the A shapes, which would be like that, and like that, and then the D shapes like that, and like that, and like that. And so the only benefit of that really is the barring that allows you the relativity of all those notes. So for certain styles, yeah, it's a go. But bear in mind where standard tuning derives from. It's classical guitar, and that probably tells you all you need to know where they're not improvising. and everything's triadic basically, you know, basic triadic harmony. And they're trying to sustain as many notes as possible, you know, and play melody things around it, you know, and it's just not something you tend to do so much nowadays. And then the other question was about funk, rhythm and muting. Again, this is not really specific to fourth tuning at all. I mean, some of your shapes will change, but again, usually for the better. It's like a standard 9, it's just that, which leaves you some finger 3. Ooh. So, you know, the muting's exactly the same. I mean, obviously, it's slightly more complicated for me because it's got an extra low B and you have to keep an eye on that. Nothing any different, you know. All the same. And then the other question was about addressing blues changes and whether that makes any difference. Well, playing blues changes is exactly the same as playing any set of changes. The fundamental thing to realise about playing a blues is that, assuming you're playing over a dominant 7th blues, like, you know, say for A7, D7, and then an E7. Now the scale you'd normally revert to there by default would be minor pentatonic. So what you've got to realise about that minor pentatonic is that it doesn't actually fit with the home chord. So going through that, A7 is A, C sharp, E, G. Well, A minor pentatonic is A, C. So you've got a clash straight away there. D, well, it's normal chord tone. E, that's in. G, that's in. So the diatonic chord, as it were, or the natural chord for A minor pentatonic would be. And we're doing. So this is where your blues notes come in. So for instance, you can play over an A7, and then you play the minor third. But you would tend to wonder, you'd need to resolve it at the end of a line into the major third. So that might be something like. Either by bending or otherwise. So you're playing the changes. Now that all flips around when you come to the next chord, which would be D7 in the sort of standard 12 bar. Now suddenly it flips around. The C sharp, which was one of your blues passing notes of the pentatonic blues scale, is now wrong. And the C that was wrong is now right. And ditto when you go to the E7, the 5, you know, that was a passing note. See that? You'd be one of those, you go. So you have to resolve into it. So it flips around from chord to chord. You know, what was right in the first chord will be wrong in the second and vice versa. So it's like playing any set of changes. You've got to think about the chord tones and hone in on those and phrase your melodies around them. So, you see, we accept all that sort of dissonance of the flat third against the major third, because we hear it as a sharp 9. In terms of actually physically playing them, well, obviously you do lose. If you play accidentally, you get a nice outside thing, so it's all cool. I tend to favour a more modular approach to the pentatonic when I'm doing this sort of thing. What I mean is that, think about the pentatonic note, scale, it's 5 notes. Well, a nice easy way of thinking about that, and again, it's repeating through the octaves in the same way the arpeggios did. Play 4 notes, slide a 5th. And again, there's sort of 4 note per string ways of approaching these things as well, which again works very well over the in fourth tuning. ultimately the pentatonic is just a repeating pattern of 2, 3 fret patterns. So for instance here, I need more, there we go, there. And then 3 2s. And you're only ever just cycling around those. So you see there they flipped. 3 3, 2 2 2, 2 2 2, 3 3. And of course that's all much easier to see and to implement in a perfect tune, as opposed to when there's that kink, you think you got it and then, oh no, up one, that's screwed that up. So yeah, I hope that answers the questions. Haven't got much time this week for this sort of thing though. So you got to hear the changes. So actually one last thing before I go, here's a very simple practical way of getting into that. Do a sort of 3-time blues. So you hit your chord, play your line, and then try and resolve into the notes of the chord shape you actually played from the off. So for instance, I just play a shell voicing there, so I could target any one of those 3 notes to end on. So, and then we'll do the change to the 4, the D7 in this case. And then back. See the tension there? Roll note. And then up to the 5. So eventually you should get to the point where you can outline the changes without playing the chords at all. You're hearing them in your head, and the lines that you play are reflecting those chords, and then the listener will be a perceived chord changes even though you're not doing any of that. Okay, hope that helps. Later. Bye.